All right, so today's video, we are we're not watching. What am I doing? A spectating video? Yesterday, there was an AMA on Reddit that talked about hero design, had a bunch of questions about different variations of things. You know, we got revealed a Roadhog nerf at some point in this, a bunch of other stuff. So we're going to read about it, react to it, and Cactus Puppy was super kind to be able to kind of compile all of the answers into a quick, doc here, which makes it a lot easier. All right? So we're going to be spectating the Google document, essentially. So we're just going to read the AMA, go through all the questions, and there's, like I said, it was a good amount of questions. I mean, it looks like there's, I don't know, close to 20 answers here to a lot of different stuff, which is pretty cool. So a lot of information. It's always good to kind of be able to look back at this and see where they're at, where their mind's at with a lot of things, where they're going to be updating stuff. So should be pretty excited. If you're watching this now on YouTube, make sure to like this video, subscribe, comment. All of it helps. Heck, put some hot takes in the comments. We do a YouTube comment video sometimes, so we can take from some of those too. So here we go. The first question here from North Blueberry was, it's not related to Season 10 balance changes, but I'm going to ask anyway. Were we secretly testing any new upcoming heroes with the Mirror Watch event? That's a good question. Sometimes using an ability and then it being on a different hero because you're okay, let's see how this interacts. Is this worth putting into the game? So I do think Mirror Watch has been really cool. And this isn't their response yet. This is my response. So sometimes I'm going to lead with my initial response. One thing that's cool with Mirror Watch is it just adds these new things into the game for heroes. I've actually really enjoyed them having some type of April Fool's style event. I think people enjoy those, and I hope they do more of them. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, the answer to that from Alec, by the way, this is from Alec, who's the lead gameplay designer, says, no secret testing of anything upcoming in the immediate. We do look at how some changes play out, though, when they become more real and get lots of games. I think the Bastion Ultimate in particular was quite fun, even if very loud on the border technically. That's the one where you just had the random PvE bots come out. Yeah, it was interesting. It was a different approach to the Ultimate. I didn't get to play a ton of Bastion in the Ultimate mode, but it was super fun. Reinhardt's Frenzy passive was also something we played around with internally, but it was quite hard to communicate effectively. So basically what they're saying is they like the idea of the passive, but how do you communicate it that's happening? It's always good to see what players get excited about when there are more wacky ideas such as Mirror Watch or April Fools. Some of those could become real down the line. You know what they need to do? Complete side note, since I'm just really biased towards the randomizer series, they should do an arcade mode where it's just it's a randomizer series, but you load in and your loadout and everything's just random. Your hero's random, your loadout's random. It's the next level. Swamp God asks, I know you guys mentioned 2 upcoming DPS hero reworks. Is there any news about how those reworks are progressing? Who they'll be for? I think people have a pretty decent idea, but official confirmation would be nice. I think they're referencing Reaper. And or when they might be arriving. They probably won't answer that. They probably won't answer exactly after the Roadhog stuff. Also, are there any other heroes under consideration for potential reworks? They say the 2 upcoming updates that were mentioned were for Cassidy and Reaper. So Cassidy and Reaper were the heroes that were going to get reworked. Alex says, for Cassidy, we started some exploration pre-Season 9 for his update. Due to where he was at that time, this update was originally looking at multiple pieces of his kit, but we saw the Season 9 changes largely benefit him, so the update has gotten more focused on Magnetic Grenade and other quality of life updates, which obviously we love a good hinder. And they say for the quality of life updates specifically to his ultimate. In Season 11, we are updating Magnetic Grenade. It will behave closer to old Flashbang, no magnetic home into that target used in the short range, and will slow/hinder the target. Ooh, okay, so it's going to be more of a skill grenade now, is my understanding? It's going to be more of a skill grenade in the sense that you actually have to aim at somebody to do it. I actually like that better. I think that'll be good. We think that that plays a lot better with his kit and removes some of the larger frustrations around Magnetic Grenade. More specifics and all that soon. That's interesting. Okay. That's very interesting. For Reaper, we went fairly wide as well in the beginning, and then started to focus closely on updating Shadow Step. That's an interesting way. At the moment, we have something we quite like, but it's actually a large technical challenge, and we are in the process of planning out the work / seeing what's possible. Ooh, that's interesting. When you hear it's a technical challenge, it means they're not just like doing like number tweaks, they're doing like legitimate like ability changes, which I think is really cool. In the meantime, we may buff Reaper in some non-tank buster ways, as he lost a lot in the most recent update. My guess is maybe they'll like change Reaper to like, or they'll just, it's probably just a cooldown situation, right? Just kind of like update the cooldown. That's probably what they'll do. Just something with like their cooldowns, like, oh, you get Swift Step, or you get Shadow Step like a second quicker. Something just like, that doesn't really change a ton, but gives Reaper a little bit of help. Because yes, tank busting has definitely changed a little bit with Reaper for sure. So, also, so far, already, I'm kind of liking the in-depth responses to this AMA. And it feels like they're not avoiding some of like the questions so far. I say that. Obviously, I didn't see the questions they didn't answer during this either. So, there's obviously that too, but very interesting so far. Very interesting. All right, let's see. OTM asked a two-part question. Why the inconsistency with dev comments / explanations for balance changes? There have been many changes that have been questionable. Biggest offender was buffing Sojourn in January when she was widely considered the best DPS that were shipped with zero explanation. Justifying these changes would help a lot with player perception, so we could understand these discrepancies. You know what? I think to kind of talk about this a little bit, and I haven't seen the response to this yet, but my guess is a lot of it's going to be like every rank plays differently, and while Sojourn is very widely considered one of the best DPSs in the game in top 500, and has been since the beginning of Overwatch 2, the reason why they buff Sojourn is because on the flip side of that, Sojourn is probably one of the worst DPS in other ranks. So when they consistently buff a hero, it means that like the win rates are so like drastically different that they have to find a way to kind of meet in the middle. And I think that's kind of what's happened with Sojourn. Now, obviously, we'll see the response, but that's what I think's happened. The number 2 question here to this two-part question was, I have to ask, what is going on with Symmetra? She was weak, then buffed, then immediately reverted, now silence. Is she getting reworked? What data shows she needed a nerf? She is super weak and hard to use on ladder, uncoordinated environment by nature, and was only played in OWCS from Mauga. Shouldn't nerf and Mauga have been enough? Sim's an interesting hero because, like, really good Sims can dominate. But, when buffed, that is. First, so the first question, I should have done this in order. The first answer to the first question was about communication. We should do a better job about this, especially when it comes to getting the community's visibility on what we are seeing versus what the player base may seem to think is the best hero at any given one time. They're basically saying that our perception of heroes that we think are strong doesn't necessarily match up with the data. These can differ regularly as certain heroes get power reputations, weaker or stronger than their reality at a given rank. Okay, so basically we just said, that are hard to shake off. Thanks for the feedback there. We will make sure we will have something here, even if it's a simple change. So I think what I like about this response is I think that Alec is basically saying, you know what? We're going to now tell you why we're making these direct buffs, rather than just kind of like be vague about it. And I think that's a good way to go about it. Like, they're going to still get, though there still will be pushback, of course. Like, they might be like, yeah, so we saw in metal ranks that this hero wasn't playing well, and then somebody would be like, yeah, but like just balance it for just this. It's like, yeah, but then like, can that actually work? Will that hero be fun? Will that hero not be picked at all because of like how you do the different balances? So I think what they're saying now is they'll start to hopefully give you a bit more of a direct response and like why they're nerfing something and like why they're doing that. We'll see how that goes. And then to the Symmetra question, says Symmetra kept some of the buffs in the patch, but yes, we hear the feedback of where her current power level is. We may have been a bit overreactive to the Mauga compositions popping up during that time frame. He was certainly overtuned, but we wanted to be sure of it. For right now, we're in discussion about Symmetra and especially her frontline presence. Believe that's a piece of kit that we'd like to promote further, whether through her survivability or beam damage. Yeah, it's probably pretty difficult to find, like, it's probably pretty difficult to find that balance right now with Sim, in the sense that, like, Symmetra, when overtuned, just dominates. When undertuned, struggles. How do you find that middle ground? And that's the question. So hopefully they're able to find that. All right, on to the next question. The archivist says, why was Smurf detection essentially removed from MMR adjustment, especially for new accounts? GM level players taking 60 plus games to reach their proper rank ruin so many more games. It feels like climbing in general is artificially slowed down, so people will play more even if they should have reached a higher rank many games ago. And then Alex says, I tapped in our own Gavin Winter for this part. Here's what he had to say. Went to Gavin, which obviously you see Gavin in the chat from time to time, having a good time, memeing. It's great. There haven't been any changes to these systems, but there are edge cases like the example of, is it Gushway? Am I saying it right? I think it's Gushway. That was recently posted in this subreddit where our systems don't perform in the way that we'd like. Most players will still be placed appropriately as they transition from quick play to competitive play, but unfortunately, cases like this have always been possible. Explaining exactly how this happens would make it easier to reproduce, so you'll have to excuse me from not going into intricate detail here. So basically, Gavin's just saying, like, it's generally a good system, but there is like edge cases where like you'll basically just see like GM players who are on alts it doesn't quite detect that as well as it could. I guess is that what I'm understanding? For the second part of your question, we believe we made it slightly too difficult to climb at the highest ranks and are looking at making some adjustments soon. I'm going to add to this because I talk about it all the time. But like, there's multiple reasons on why it's too difficult to climb at the highest ranks. And I'm not saying it's because you can't win. A bunch is because like the top 500 leaderboard incentivizes not playing. And I've talked about this forever. Chat knows what I'm talking about. When you have a ladder system at the high end like level, like players aren't going to queue up and wait in 20, 30-minute queues. If like the ladder incentivizes, hey, by the way, if you don't play, you're more than likely going to climb than anything else. It's become just a bunch of people will get to like top 50, top 100, and then they log onto their alt account because the queues are too long, and they rinse and repeat, and then the top 500 ladder, all the way from top to bottom of top 500, becomes scuffed because it just turns into like an alt account fest that turns into like so many different variations. So like if the ranked ladder was promoted the idea of like, hey, if you play, you can climb. Also, if you don't play, you'll either like decay out and then have to replay to get that back or something like that. But they don't have that in place. So like, it's going to be much harder to climb at the top end of top 500 in general because like their players aren't queuing because there's no point to, because one, they're incentivized not to. And then two, the players who do want to play at that exact rank, like rank 30, can't even get a game because the other players are camping the ladder, and then they go, okay, well, I'm not going to wait in the queue, so I'm going to log on to the alt, and it's just an endless rotation of alt. So it's been like 5 years now of them not adjusting the ladder with that type of decay system, and like that's going to continue to be a thing. Like players still, even if it's easier to climb at the top end, it's the queue times that will decide it all in the end. No one's going to want to wait in 20, 30-minute queues for a 10-minute push game that by the time you get to a 30-minute queue time is extending the range. So the way that the matchmaker works is that as the queue time gets longer, the range of players you look for gets a lot wider, right? So what would normally be like a GM1, GM2 really good game, because nobody's queuing at that rank because they don't want to deal with the queue times, it now becomes a GM1 to Masters 4 range game, and as you know, that game is going to play a lot different than GM1, GM2. So it's a whole issue. I had to get it in there because it was a part of the question, but that's why like it's going to be hard to get players to want to like climb or like play on the ladder as much if you're not basically rewarding players for playing on the ladder. Straight up. That just was going to happen. Had to go with that one. Sorry, chat. I went on a little bit of a side rant on that one. As you know, that's a quite a common discussion because people are always asking like, oh, why are your queue times so long? Oh, why? Well, what's the point of alts on like, you know, this and that? And I just like to kind of go into depth and kind of explain a little bit. Accurate Memin says, a month later, and considering he's displayed proudly on the Twitter post the AMA, I got my question. How have you guys felt about the past reworks on Roadhog and the new one, Wreck and Ball? Like, what were the goals exactly, your personal thoughts, the community response, and what you want to fine-tune with them post-rework? Those things, I think, most people would be interested on how you guys have felt now that it's been a bit. And then Alec responds with a long 200-word essay. For the most part, we are relatively happy with the new bases both have been given, but there is some still fine-tuning to be done, which is good. I talk about it all the time. If you have a good blueprint in a game, you can build off it much easier. If you don't have a good blueprint, you have to spend so much time creating that blueprint that you need, that getting into the step of like, okay, we're happy with where the hero's at, now we need to fine-tune the hero is a good thing. I'll start with Wreck and Ball. Our goals were to give him more flexibility with his movement/engage options, heighten the benefits he gives to his team, and give him some quality of life updates. Side note, And I don't know if chat agrees or disagrees. Do you think we're getting to the point where you should let Ball grapple out of spawn again? Like, immediately? The reason why they got rid of it was because you could stall on 2CP really easily. It's kind of changed since then. And maybe there's a middle ground here. Because, like, their concern might be, oh, but, like, you know, players will just sit on, like, walls and spin around for an hour and a half and can't do anything. Okay, I get that. But, like, what if they can make it so you can get out of spawn? What if they make it so you can get out of spawn? Like, immediately, but then after that, it goes back to the normal cooldown. Something like that could work, right? I don't know how that works technically, but there's definitely, like, something here where I think, like, from a quality of life update for Ball, that could also be helpful. Then wouldn't that mess with Clash? I mean, not necessarily, because you can go other heroes right now that, like, honestly have really good mobility. Like, I obviously I haven't done, like, I haven't tested it, but I imagine Doomfist can get to the point pretty quickly. So, like, what gets the point quicker right now? A Wrecking Ball with waiting on the 6-second grapple cooldown out of spawn, or a Doomfist who uses their cooldowns to get the point? You know what I'm saying? I think Doom might even win. I think Doom is faster. And before someone tests that and we're wrong on that one, listen, that's fine if I am. I think our changes all attempt to address those goals, but one I think we can hit harder in the future is heightening the benefits he gives to his team. We were a little conservative with the adaptive shields change. Overhealth is hyper scary in coordinated environments. So perhaps there's room for that to be more pronounced through tune-in and actual feedback received in-game. Working on some updates there. Overall, though, Wrecking Ball is doing much better after his recent updates, and we believe we have a great base work to work with going forward. And just to talk about this with Wrecking Ball, I talk about it sometimes in my spectating videos. Wrecking Ball also has this really major issue of perceived value. Any hero that becomes more of a flanker style, you can even see that with Doom sometimes, but the value can be more apparent. Wrecking Ball could be doing 20 amazing things, but there's also a situation where the teammates see none of that. So their perceived value of a Wrecking Ball, like their perceived value of Wrecking Ball is that they're doing nothing. So they're trying to reel Wrecking Ball in more to be able to be with the team to show that value in the terms of, oh, I gave you overshields. Problem? Current Overwatch where, like, your HP gets grinded down so quickly and tanks have been struggling. Most Wrecking Balls aren't going to have the time to give them the HP, and a lot of Wrecking Balls don't want to trade the HP. Now, there's going to be, like, really niche cases in, like, matches, for example. Like, I've heard that one of the best teams in Korea right now is using the shields and, like, a really cool tech to go in there. That's, you know, top-end OWCS gameplay is going to be a lot different than somebody's gold game. But that's what they're trying to do. They want Wrecking Ball to have more of that perceived value, so players aren't just telling their Wrecking Balls to swap off to Orisa. For Roadhog, aside from conversations about his current survivability, we plan to hit that soon, which, by the way, there's apparently a Roadhog nerf today. There are some things for us to look at concerning the frequency of his combo. For example, his Pigpen begins to go on cooldown when you throw it. So you can pre-place one, it gets destroyed, and then Roadhog already has it ready again, even though the enemy may think there's a window where Hook is less deadly. Does this happen with Junkrat Trap too? That's one discussion we've recently had. Still, some work here for us to do in terms of the value Pigpen brings outside of the combo as well, and how we can make those windows of combo potential less frequent. They're nerfing Hog. That's basically what I got for that one. I don't know how to say their name here. Brought asks, are there any nerfs being discussed for Hog, specifically his survivability? Times where multiple people are shooting at a Hog, and he just walks away while using his breather, seemingly gaining more health than losing health, makes the damage you do to him feel pointless. Yep. And is very unfun to play against. Yep. Especially now that headshots do less damage to him. The response from Alec is, yes, we plan on nerfing his survivability very soon. We are touching Take a Breather and Whole Hog in an upcoming patch. Hoping that can go live tomorrow. Keep in mind that's today if you're watching. I think the video will be out today for the AMA. It's either already live or it'll be out today, like soon. So, very interesting. But yes, glad to hear. Hog has been running wild. So, we'll see what happens. Hero Hyrule, I'm going with that one because I know Zelda. Asks, with the major tank changes, example, armor changes, knockback changes, headshot change, and individual balance changes that released last week, I am very curious. Have there been any noticeable immediate shifts in the win rates and pick rates amongst tanks? Has there been any collateral shifts within the DPS and support role because of the recent tank changes? I know that, for instance, after the recent armor changes, some heroes have become weaker against armored tanks. Tracer and Reaper, while others have become significantly stronger, Cass and Hanzo. I'm interested in knowing how the teams behind the scenes statistics have measured lately as a result of the recent tank changes, that is. If it's possible for you guys to share it. If not, understandable. The response here is, some of this is related to meta happening or balance changes, but also related to armor changes / headshot reduction for tanks. From what we can see, the biggest winners in terms of their performance delta of the patch are Ana, Junkrat, Pharah, Roadhog, Sigma, Wreck and Ball, and Zarya. That sounds about right. Sigma's ultimate was better, so I think players also started playing Sigma a bit more. Wreck and Ball is probably going to hit overtune territory eventually. Zarya, just people struggle against Zarya a lot of the time. I'm actually not surprised by this one here. Many heroes stayed relatively similar, while a handful saw a decrease in their performance. Bastion, and now chat's going to be surprised by this because hot take, I think with the recent changes, I think D.Va's kind of fallen into that B tier. And I know that's a weird way to look at that, but D.Va is in a unique spot right now. D.Va's still good. And there's a chance you can maybe argue A tier for D.Va, but D.Va's starting to fall into that B tier now because D.Va got hit really hard by that, and like the what you can do counter-wise is just worth playing some of the other tanks. Doesn't mean it's bad, but like D.Va definitely is having a bit of a struggle with that. And then Mauga, Orisa, and Reaper with the other heroes, of course, because Mauga and Orisa have been nerfed recently, and then Reaper also was nerfed. So it seems like what they wanted to do is exactly what happened. They nerfed the heroes they wanted to nerf, and it hit the results they're looking for. Doesn't mean it's perfect. Okay, what in the absolute wall of text questions? Oh, okay. They only answered a couple. Okay, cool. They answered 1 and 2. All right, I don't have to go through all these. Omnic asks, okay, I'll try to ask some general questions. Free to choose which one to answer. The first question that gets answered is, in February, I noticed that you would receive great feedback on the maps after the first hacked mode. But I was wondering when those ideas will be implemented, especially for flashpoints. Alec responds to that saying, think you are referencing the speed boost that would potentially come to Flashpoint. Took us some time to get these in a good place, but they have been promising in playtests and are on track for a later season. Wait, speed boost out of spawn on Flashpoint? I kind of like that. It's important to us that when we add elements like that to a mode, that it not only brings quality gameplay, but it's also communicated well through sound and VFX. Feel good here now. Basically, what they're saying is that they want to add something like that. They don't want to just put it in the game and you have to guess. They wanted you to have a feedback that you can see that. So, then question 2 that gets answered was, personally, I like Clash mode, but I also wanted to know what kind of results you receive that require modification in your opinion, or if you have noticed any optimal results to maintain or imitate for other game modes. The response to that was, we got a lot of great feedback, but there are some things that the team wished we did better with the Clash preview. Firstly, it should have showed up more in quick play so y'all got more reps on it and get a better feel for the flow of the game mode. I agree. Arcade open queue is a lot of hero stacking, a lot of extra tanks. It doesn't quite show how it will play. I did get it in quick play and it still played really well, but I also understand that. Secondly, we don't think it was best suited for open queue and arcade. Okay, there you go. If we do something like this again, we'll clean that up. With the feedback we received, we've been investigating how to make the final point more appealing to capture for the attacking team. Many games could result in the attacking team not actually wanting to push on to the last point because it wasn't worth the reward, which I agree. Eventually you realize it wasn't worth giving up the second point after, so you just give them the first point back, and then you just sit there. It was harder to capture, give up a lot of position if you lose, which I agree. Plenty of iteration happened in there now to address that particular issue. So, I think everybody will have a different opinion on Clash. I didn't mind Clash. I actually, believe it or not, and I'm sure people will disagree, I actually like the way the map was designed. It felt like you had multiple team fights on one point, and you also had a lot of survivability and cover that allowed for like a really cool gameplay experience on Clash. There's definitely going to be issues and things that they can fix. I also would like to see maybe a couple more mega health packs. If you didn't notice, there was only one on the map total. It was on the outside of the map on the middle point. I think that could be a little bit more beneficial because I felt like it was a little bit harder to find some of those health packs. So maybe like a health pack on like each point to kind of give people that opportunity. I enjoyed Clash. I thought Clash was fun. I thought it was an enjoyable experience. I obviously things they can work on, but I definitely liked the direction it was going. It also kind of felt like it very much was an Overwatch 2 game mode. It definitely had a bit more of that deathmatchy feel, which, as we know, Overwatch 2 is leaning more towards the deathmatchy feel than like the full teamwork, and I think Clash plays perfectly into that. So, Mabang asks, hi there. I think one of the most obvious questions people here will have is, what are the plans to balance out Roadhog? Dude, I love how all the questions are about Roadhog. With the mid-season tank adjustments, I'm sure the general sentiment is that Hog is an outlier for survivability and damage amongst the tanks, especially since Orisa isn't there to keep him in check now. The headshot damage reduction in his soft rework from before means his survivability is through the roof, and his damage is high as ever. What are the plans to rein him back in? I will also personally say I don't think the solution is to buff Orisa. I agree. Rather, nerf Hog to keep him in line. Aside from Hog, I think the tank balance is pretty great now otherwise. Maybe. I just don't. Let's see what it's like when Hog isn't meta. You could very much be correct there, but I have to see what it's like when Hog isn't meta. Also, is there going to be something done about the overbearing passiveness of heroes like LifeWeaver that will simultaneously not interact with the enemy team at all, while also not providing any offensive utility for his team? I mean, you have a little bit of offensive utility with the grip. Like, you can like make some cool like high noon plays, but that's very niche. I think for all other 9 players in the lobby, it's a pretty miserable experience to have a LifeWeaver. Thanks for your time. The response from Alec is, answer the Roadhog question in a different place, but yes, change is coming soon. Let's go. For LifeWeaver, one of the discussions we are having right now, actually this week, and have been having for a while, is around the friction that comes with switching between his healing and damage. Giving him more flexibility here would be a great boon to his capability within team fights. Additionally, we've experimented a lot with his pedal platform. Personally, would love for that to be a more attractive area to stand on as a teammate, whether that be through a buff the platform gives you or something else. Ooh. There's a lot of learned behavior to work through as allies hop off the platform quite often. So what are they saying? Like, give like a... Like, make like the pedal platform be like a healing station when you're on it. Make it give you like increased damage boost. It could be really scuffed, but I kind of like the idea of the pedal kind of giving you more of like the risk reward of the pedal. I think like, I don't know, that'd be kind of interesting actually. Yeah, you'd have to adjust like the HP on the pedal or something to like kind of like offset like some of those changes, but I kind of like the idea of that one. It's kind of like a cool concept. I don't know. It could either be terrible or amazing. We'll see. We have Skatsy here asking 2 Mercy questions. And it looks like both of them are going to be answered. The first question is the team looking at Mercy at all for any changes / small buffs? And 2, what is Mercy's pick and win rate now compared to Season 3? Back in mid-Season 9, the DPS passive was reduced, and a dev blog stated Mercy wouldn't see changes as she should be more reliable moving forward with the reduction. That nerf was reverted, and Mercy stayed the same. Mercy has been struggling because of this. The community has been ranking Mercy as a D-tier support for a few seasons now, and she's in this weird spot where people don't like playing against her, with her, or as her anymore. I and many others still enjoy her most out of all the other heroes, but she doesn't play nearly as fun as she used to after the changes that have been made to her, mainly nerfs, in the game over the last year. Thanks. Which is true. Just to give you an idea, the DPS passive has made Mercy a bit worse. And definitely is a bit of struggle, where Mercy just can't keep up with a lot of what's happening with the heals, and like you end up in this spot where like, well, you can't heal about the tank, you can only really damage boost your DPS, and once they take damage from the other like player, like unless that player has good cover, they can fall over immediately, you can't catch up. So there's definitely some things here for Mercy that could be adjusted. So the response to the first question about like any changes, Alex says, I think we are more happy in the 20% DPS passive world than the 15%. There you go, chat. For anybody who's been saying go back to 15%, it sounds like they're very settled on the 20% DPS passive, so that will continue to be in the game. It cuts through a lot better, helps mitigate the healing more effectively. I will say, you can definitely tell on the 20%, it takes away that, like, for what happened, and I think the reason why they want to do it is, one, you can definitely kill tanks more now, right? Like, say you get rid of the 20% damage, say you get rid of the passive in general, tanks will be just unkillable, and they'd have to kind of revert a lot of changes. Number 2, it helps a lot when people are getting pocketed. So, like, it's a little bit easier to follow up on the limbs, and they want to give you the ability to get in the limb, right? You know, Overwatch is a game where you don't want to be stuck in a scenario where you're in these, like, 4-minute team fights. So that's why they have that there. Now, there's cases where it can be really good, and there's cases where it can be really bad. I also think there's going to be a question one day, and I don't know if this will be anytime soon, is do you start to make passives a bit more individual for each hero, right? Because we're already in the world of passives, right? Like people are like, oh, get rid of passives. They're not going to get rid of passives. If anything, they're going to keep adding more. So it's like, are we in a situation now where like some heroes should get certain like passive benefits, but then the other heroes, because like they play differently? Like for example, a Tracer keeping up 20% DPS passive on somebody is different than, let's say, a Genji, right? As in, like, Tracer is going to constantly sit there and, like, do, like, this really small poke damage where you can't do anything. So it's like, will that ever happen where they go down that route? Where they start to look at it from, like, a wider range? Where, like, some heroes just don't need certain passives, or they give them a different passive based off of that? It's a question that you never know. It's interesting to see where that goes. I have no idea. Just don't be surprised if they ever do that. And then the next question here is, or the next respond to that. Oh, wait, and they say, so Mercy is more worth a look when that world is permanent. There are some questions of how far we can push her movement, and know that is one of the most requested changes. Which good movement for Mercy can make it a lot easier for a Mercy for sure. It still won't help with the issue of keeping your teammates alive, but. And then continues on to say, Mercy is still a top-picked 3 for support, and even higher on console until you hit GM/top 500. Her performance follows a similar trend, where she's in the top grouping for most ranks and remains above average at the highest ranks. Doesn't mean that she won't receive any changes, but that is where she is at currently. So they're in a tough spot, aren't they? Their data says, hey, by the way, Mercy is still playing really well. But does Mercy feel fun to play? Does it feel fun to have a Mercy right now? Does Mercy need changes? And the answer to that is, yeah, Mercy will need changes in some way. So what can they do? What can they do to help with that? Because they're in a tough spot there. I still think that Mercy definitely could benefit from a couple changes. I think, like, one thing I do want to kind of stop here for a second and say, there's one change that they don't even need to make to Mercy that I think will make it a bit easier for Mercy that I would love to see, and I hope they add it ASAP. They need to add on your teammates' health bars to know if they have the DPS passive on them. Now, I know it's a very, like, more of a niche quality of life change, but I'm telling you right now, anytime I have spectated the Mercy recently, I see it every time. There's 3 players critical, 2 of them have the passive on them, 1 of them don't. Now, for a Mercy player, which hero out of those 3 is going to be the most beneficial hero to go to? The one that doesn't have the passive on them. So being able to see maybe just like a little arrow next to their health bar, something like that, right? Just something like that can help a Mercy have a little bit better, quicker decision making, and at least have a better option to be able to keep the teammates alive. But I think that needs to be a necessity because, like, it actually can help you make good decisions on that one. First question here from Bigfoot is, who is the hardest character to balance and tweak out of the 3 roles? The answer to that from Josh is probably Sombra, due to permanent invisibility restricting how deadly we can make her, but also because she is a hero that excels with strong team coordination. There are a handful of other heroes with performance stats that differ greatly from the broader community perception of them, and that can create difficulty in how we approach balancing them as well. I have a feeling they're kind of talking about, like, Sojourn and, like, Kiriko there, because those are 2 heroes that constantly get buffed, and every time people are just like, why are these heroes buffed? And then they're like, yeah, there's some heroes here that have really strong community perception, but then, like, they're not actually what they're at, and I think that is what they're referencing here. So, obviously up for interpretation. So, and yeah, I mean, Sombra definitely they try to find ways. I feel like current Sombra's not bad to play against now. Still annoying for tank players, but you have more follow up now. Like, you can actually follow up on a Sombra, which I like. All right, next question from OWL Charts is, will you ever make pick rates and win rates public, even a couple weeks after the fact? I feel like it would do a lot to help people understand why changes are made. Is there a win rate range you want to keep all heroes to stay within? All right, the answer to this is there aren't any plans currently to shift resources to support in something like that. Sites like Overbuff don't have the complete picture, but the data there for win rates and such is generally fairly close. Okay, you know what? I'm surprised by that. I will say I was certainly someone that thought because of private profiles, it might make it a lot harder, but, like, they're basically saying that Overbuff doesn't have the complete picture, but definitely can be fairly close. So there you go. They're saying that they're not saying take the Overbuff win rates with a grain of salt. they're saying it may not paint the complete picture. So there you go. That's always interesting to hear. I guess that gives you a good question about data in general. Do they do that with data sometimes? This is a complete random question. But like, does that happen with data and stats where like you don't necessarily need the full percentage to like realize that it will probably end up in the very similar percentage range? Is that working like data and stats? As in like you don't need 100% of the data because the data will generally align with what you have after a certain point. So that makes sense as to why like, it's based on sample size. So like basically they'll find it within range. It won't be the exact number, but it can be close. Okay, that's good to know. Hey, listen, I didn't take stats or know much about data, so whenever I get opportunities to ask about those questions, why not, right? There is some argument against being too transparent with those stats, in that it can create a bit of feedback loop where you might see player behavior driven by what appears to be the meta in the stats, but that kind of happens already with this general discussion and sentiment around heroes without stats as well. I think that's like if a hero... Is that like a situation where like, if a hero isn't played a ton, and you know like their win rate's like 57%, but like it's just they're like it's played so much less that their win rate is much higher. So like it doesn't mean that if more players were playing that hero that it would lead to that type of situation is basically where they're at. I think that's what they're saying. Like we're like a hero may have a high win rate, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're a super strong hero. It's just that like so many less players play it that like if there was a larger sample size, it could end up more like kind of in that 50% range, or if not less. Our target range for hero viability by win rate is between 45 to 55% unmirrored win rate at Masters rank and above. To give you an idea, by the way, chat, when it comes to unmirrored win rate, that means that you're not playing against the same hero, right? If you have 2 Roadhogs in a game every single game, the win rate's going to be 50% no matter what, right? So the only way they can get on the data there is to find the unmirrored win rate and then see how that hero matches up against the other heroes that aren't mirrored against them. That's what that means. Those individual win rates often can fluctuate 2 to 3% by day, mostly because heroes tend to have a wider range of win rates per map, and we're looking at the global average of those, but also individual player performance isn't consistent, which is true. And what they mean by that, and this is why, just to kind of go back to this in general, this is why matchmaking sometimes can also feel scuffed and also feel like it can never hit like a full consistency level, is because like players will just have days where they just aren't playing that well. Like, do you have days where you just, like, get on and, like, you just aren't playing well? No matchmaker can detect that at that point. Not you? Oh, yeah, you play perfect. I forgot. My bad. Everybody plays perfect in ranked, except your teammates. But, like, that's what happens, right? Like, the matchmaker can't really dictate. Like, they can't detect that you're just not playing well that day, right? Or, exactly. Or, let's say that you're a Reinhardt player, and then you play 7 games, and you get Havana, Circuit Royale, Dorado out of 3 of your maps, right? You could be the best Ryan in the world. The map might also heck with your win rate. So there's definitely things that can be difficult in that sense, but that's also why it's really hard to balance a game when you have so many map variations and things. But yeah. Lower pick rate heroes fluctuate more, and there's less confidence in their win rate being indicative of actual strength. Actually, we just kind of talked about that earlier. Extremely high pick rate heroes have a similar problem when looking at unmirrored stats, as in like if they're a high pick win rate because they've heard they're good, it could drive the win rates down, because the players are hearing the hero's good. It doesn't mean they're good at the hero, and then that also hexes the win rate. So a really strong hero could have a lower win rate because players aren't... There's just players just locking the hero now, but they're not as good at the hero. In the end, stats require interpretation to understand their context, and that is why they are not the only basis for balance changes, but are a useful tool to measure impact of changes patch over patch. It basically sounds like while they take the balance into account, it doesn't completely drive how they make their changes. Although, I will say, and this kind of goes back to, like, is that the case, though, when they constantly buff an Orisa? It always feels like Orisa is a hero they come back to and buff. And, like, they always talk about how Orisa's win rate goes down a lot when they make these changes. So then, is there a spot now where they just keep Orisa as is? No more buffs to Orisa for a while? Is that what they do, or do they keep looking at that? Okay, Arg, obviously plays a lot of Hanzo, asks, what is Hanzo's new job? Is he supposed to take over Farah's place as the new go-to permanently pocketed hero? To explain more in depth, Hanzo used to be a sniper, but the recent changes caused most heroes to require 1 extra shot to eliminate a target. Considering Hanzo is the slowest shooting primary fire-focused DPS, he was impacted the most, making him the only primary fire-focused DPS who relies on cooldowns to finish off targets due to the very long time to kill. Okay, we have a lot of math coming up here, chat. Holy crap, this is a lot. Assuming a full charge arrow, full charge in the arrows to be able to hit targets past melee range. It's 3 body shots is 2.5 seconds. Time to kill is 3.25 seconds if bow is not preloaded. Or best case scenario, 1 headshot plus 1 body shot equals 1.25 seconds. Time to kill, 2 seconds if the bow is not preloaded, which is just holding your button down. Compared to, for example, for Cassidy, 4 body shots equals 1.5 seconds time to kill. Or best case scenario, 2 headshots equals 0.5 seconds time to kill. Now, I do have one question here, and I think sometimes, what is the size of Cassidy's left click in comparison to Hanzo's redwood trees that he shoots? And I only ask that because sometimes comparing the time to kill of Cassidy can be different with the size of the projectile, which I'm curious on. But, like, it's an interesting stat in the sense that, like, a projectile hero will struggle a bit more and has less time to get something going in comparison to something like Cassidy. There's a lot there, but I also understand what the concept of this is. So let's continue on here. Hanzo's only advantage here is that he deals full damage past 35 meters, which is good. But trying to hit someone 2 to 3 times in a row, even at 35 meters, is next to impossible, considering physical cover, plus the long time to kill, plus the projectile travel time. At the same time, Mercy Pocketed Hanzo can still one-shot, with the added benefit of now having a 2 times bigger arrow hitbox and buff storm arrows. Josh's response to this, I got confused because it said the A, is Hanzo is still an effective mid-range burst damage hero even with the one-shot kill, without the one-shot kills. Post-Season 9 with the projectile size changes actually saw an increase in Hanzo's performance on the stat side. I do hear you on the loss of how good the one-shot kills felt, but an overarching goal of Season 9 was to reduce a lot of those burst damage frustrations for players on the receiving end of it. Armor changes in Season 10 have been a benefit to his damage. Still, very early, but we've been experimenting with Justin health pools for some of more of the evasive or high damage heroes, which would also put them back into the range of lethal Hanzo headshots and some of the other hero combos at 225 HP. But while it would bring some interest and texture to hero interactions overall, there are also a bunch of other problems to solve if you want to go through with it. So it sounds like they're considering the idea of looking at some of the more mobile heroes to get a little bit of their breakpoints changed, HP-wise, which I think is definitely something that is interesting. I think basically the response is Hanzo is still good. Yes, if you're a Hanzo player, it's frustrating that you can't just sit there and one-shot people anymore. But overall, because they made the size of the Hanzo projectile go from a pine tree to a redwood tree, they are basically saying that, yeah, they're probably not going to go back to that. They may give you opportunity to one-shot a couple more heroes, but they're not going to make it so you can one-shot every hero, is what it sounds like. Scared Funny has a question. I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to ask this, but is the current balance team confident about being able to fix, they put these in bold, so I think I have to read it like that, the biggest problems the tank role has been suffering since the Overwatch 2 release? I'm specifically talking about counter-swap meta and unhealthy tank designs being allowed to exist, like tank busters and unkillable tanks, Roadhog, Mauga, and Orisa. Unfortunately, counter-swap will happen a ton unless they make an actual, like, change to, like, how the game plays. But, like, I know what they're saying. Are we confident that making tanks able to do almost everything is the right thing to do? Are we confident that we can make tank fun again for the majority of the player base without straight buffs? Little bit of a side hot take here. Tank is still, not even a hot take, tank is still the hardest role to get people to play. So even if they do a lot of really fun changes that will make tank fun again for a lot of players, sometimes that also makes it unfun for the DPS and support players. And it's a really hard thing to find. Keep in mind, by the way, I am a tank player saying this because it's still very hard to get players to play tank. So we'll see what they go with that one. But I just wanted to kind of add that in there. The headshot reduction and knockback reduction changes are especially interesting to me because I really don't think that simple number changes will fix how tank feels to play. Also, chat, can you correct me if I'm wrong on this one? And I don't know, maybe it was just me. Did they also make it so tanks are affected by that in the sense of like Junker Queen's pull? Because I swear to you, I pulled a tank the other day as Queen and they went like half a foot. Like that, like changing that for like Junker Queen, for example, is the equivalent of if they made it so Hog's hook just stopped halfway through. Because I played Queen, I pulled the tank, they went like half a foot. So like there's also ways they have to kind of look into that. Because like I feel like it just makes the Queen just feel way worse because a lot of the time that's who you're going to go against. But I feel like Queen's Knife should be one of those that isn't affected by that. The headshot reduction and knockback reduction changes are especially interesting to me because I don't really think that the simple number changes will fix how tanks feel to play. Keep in mind, anytime I add that extra oomph to the sentence, it's because they put it in bold, and I really need to showcase the boldness they put into that word. Next statement they have here is they say, I don't want to counter swap. I don't want to face unkillable and easy to play tanks. I don't want tank busters. I really love this game, but it currently feels like as if we're going into the wrong direction while ignoring the biggest problems. I mean, it's a good question. Tank is in a spot where it doesn't feel as fun to play. That is for sure. I mean, there's no denying that. I think most tank players will say that. So yeah, it's a good question. Zach, thanks for the 2 months of tier 1. Thank you, appreciate it. I do think, though, if you're looking to play tank without counter swap, unkillable tanks, or you don't want tank busters, I think it's going to be a bit. And honestly, there are some tanks that you can play right now that have a little bit of a better feeling. Like yesterday, I played BAP, and I was tanking like crazy on BAP, right? So there are some tanks you can play right now. It just isn't quite in that same role. Keep in mind, that is an over-exaggeration. I understand tanks have more HP, and you can show me probably some data to back up that tanks have an extra 3.5 second survivability if you use your BAP cooldowns correctly and your tank cooldowns correctly. I know that. We gotta remember, we're also a streamer and a YouTuber now. We have to over-exaggerate a little bit, okay? Anyway, the answer to that is, at its core, Overwatch is a game designed around being able to swap heroes to gain a tactical advantage or to help solve a challenge you might be encountering. Problem is that a lot of players don't switch in Overwatch. But a lot of players, especially when you're on tank, expect you to switch. But then you switch, and then the other team switches, but then they switch to a better combo, and then your DPS players are like, no, I don't want to switch. You have to switch. When you're like, well, problem we're running into. They have this, and I can't do anything. They go, that's your problem. Swap to this hero that I want you to play. And you go, I'm already on that hero you want me to play. They go, well, it's a tank diff. That's your fault. It's like, no, they're also running in a comp that their heroes can also counter swap you. And then you're by yourself, and they're also contributing to you getting rolled. Yeah, not my problem. That's pretty much the discussion that happened, right? They want you to switch, but when they need to switch, ain't happening. So, and plus you have people who will only play one hero, etc., which is fine. You know, play the way you want to on that one. But there's a lot there when the design is around that, but players aren't playing the way that it is designed in that sense, right? This contributes to keeping the moment-to-moment gameplay experience dynamic, drives hero diversity, and offers a wider range of both strategic gameplay and skill expression in learning when/where/how to play multiple heroes, or swap over to Sombra immediately and quick play the moment you see a tank. That wasn't a part of the answer there. I'm just adding to the part where whenever I play quick play now, if I don't see a Sombra within the first 3 seconds, are you even playing quick play? Because I don't think so. They load into a quick play game, and they go, is there a tank? If so, I'm going Sombra. So as long as the tank loads into the lobby, which sometimes is rare, they will go Sombra right away from the get-go. There is a question of how much of an advantage is too much compared to the cost of switching. Ideally, we want counters to be clear and understandable, but soft enough that it's still possible to outplay a disadvantaged matchup. It is a team game, though, and 1v1 matchups are not the highest priority when assessing the heroes. Okay. Little side note here, chat, and they talk about switching. I talked about this before they made this swap. You know how they gave you ult charge when you swapped heroes? Want a bit of a hot take here? That had nothing to do with like why you would swap off a tank or not. I could be at 75% ult charge right now. I don't care if I get 15% ult charge. I'm switching regardless. That's been the better play from tanking from the get-go. Like at no point was it like an issue of like how much ult charge you got in your swaps. The same decision making has been that way. At least for me personally, my choice on switching a hero is the exact same as it was before they made that change. Remember when that was a thing? It was like, oh, we gotta get rid of like the percentage that you get ult charge wise, and I'm like, that's not gonna change what's gonna happen with tanks though. You just change tanks because you change tanks at this point. The ult, listen, don't get me wrong, I like having the extra ult charge you give me, but that has zero indication on why I swap a hero now. Doesn't mean it wasn't like toning that down is fine to reduce ultimates, but I don't think it was like the why you had to do that for tanks. Okay, tanks do feel this the most with only one of them per team in a 5v5 role queue. But all roles do experience the pressure to counter and be countered to an extent. Okay, that's true. But tanks do feel it the most, for sure, because you're the only hero that can be swapped on by every other role, consistently. We're striving to find a balance between swapping heroes every death, which certainly feels too often. And rarely swapping heroes are getting trapped in mirror matches every game, which quickly leads to fatigue. We've seen a lot of improvements here compared to earlier seasons, but it could always be better. Unhealthy and unpopular designs are not necessarily the same thing. When designing heroes, we aim to provide a wide range of playstyles, mechanics, and aesthetics for players to enjoy. It's okay if they don't all resonate with everyone broadly. We'll do our best to make the game as fun as it can be for a wide audience. Yeah, they didn't change a bunch of things. Now we have senior hero producer. All right, question from Walter. What is the average rank of your playtesters, and what level of input do they have in deciding what changes are made in each balance patch? Good question, Walter. The response here, a huge part of our team culture revolves around playtesting. From designers to QA and community management, everyone has the opportunity to play what we're working on and give open, honest feedback. One of the advantages of this model is we get perspective from a wide range of player ranks from GM1 to Bronze 5. I didn't know Vent and Meme were playtesting. It's been a while since we've taken an official poll on average rank, but having a wide sample helps prevent tunnel vision and on feedback from specific ranks. Honestly, I mean, I think having a wide range is good. I think there comes a part where, truthfully, and I'll fall into this sometimes too, where like how I play games in top 500, how my games will be are going to be so different than how a bronze game plays, that not being able to see the feedback from both sides of it would just wouldn't be good, right? You need to see how the game plays in each rank differently, right? Well, the GM1 one can be different now with a new rank system. GM1's a lot harder to obtain now, but like the old GM1, that very much could make sense. You know what I mean? All right, now we have Jody, community manager. Jody's awesome. Everybody that's been answering the question has been awesome, by the way. Jody said the question here is, since the change to magnetic grenade from Flash, it feels like everyone has hated it, including the cast players. I was just wondering what the thought process was behind the creation of magnetic grenade, and if there is any plans to change nade in the future to make it feel better and less frustrating for both the cast and the enemy. Honestly, this response to this was that Alec answered this, and here's the response. So she just links them the response there. Oh, then there's okay. So this is a little bit of okay. This is just like follow-up questions. Yeah, okay. We actually don't even need to do this part of the AMA because it's just taken like people's questions and just into being like, oh no, we have this here. So, which is good. It's good to like kind of like bring this feedback back. But yeah, this is good. But yeah, there you go. So that was the Reddit AMA. First of all, let me know how you liked this video. I would like to know. I will say one thing I want to do in the future. I think when I do these again is I want to do the question, do the answer, and then do my response. I think sometimes I get a little bit lost because I just go into such detail and we lose track of what the question was. We can lose track of what the question was, so I do want to do that better next time. But overall, I had fun with this. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave some comments. Give us your takes in the chat. What you comments, what you feel, all that. All of it helps. Like the video. Subscribe to the YouTubes. I don't know. I probably said it like 6 times. Subscribe to the YouTube. With that being said, we also record these live on stream, so stop by the Twitch chat if you haven't. We have a lot of fun here. You can see it below the webcam. With that being said, I hope you have an amazing day/night.